She called the cops and pointed at me like I was dumping toxic waste. "He's destroying community property," she yelled, while her workers were pouring concrete into my creek. I was standing ankle-deep in gray water, watching wet cement spread across the stream that ran behind my house. The same creek my father showed me when I bought this land. The same creek written clearly in my deed. 3 trucks were backed up along the trail. 2 men in safety vests avoided eye contact. And at the center of it all stood Linda, our HOA. President, arms crossed like she owned the earth itself. "You can't block drainage approved by the board," she snapped. "This water causes erosion to community land." I stared at her. "This isn't community land." She smiled. Not confused, not unsure, just smug. "It is now." That was the moment I understood something wasn't normal. I'm not loud. I'm not the guy who argues in meetings. I'm a retired Army engineer. I build things. I fix things. I read maps carefully. When I bought this property in Cedar Creek Estates, the creek line was the reason I chose it. The survey showed it clearly running through my backyard only. Linda knew that. Or at least, she should have. The first cop walked toward me slowly. "Sir, she says you threatened her contractors." I looked at the man's boots sinking into the mud. "Does this look like I'm the one destroying something?" Linda jumped in. "He's unstable. He's been obsessed with this creek for months." "Obsessed?" I felt my jaw tighten. 3 weeks ago, the HOA sent me a violation notice. It said my private water feature was affecting shared drainage. They demanded I redirect it. I sent them the county survey the next day. No reply. Then yesterday, I saw orange spray paint markings near the creek bed. And now this. The second truck started pouring again. Wet concrete slid like thick lava, swallowing the natural flow. The water had nowhere to go. It began spreading sideways, toward the lower yards, toward Linda's house. I almost laughed. "Ma'am," the cop said carefully, "did you verify property lines with the county?" Linda lifted a folder dramatically. "The HOA has authority over environmental compliance." That wasn't an answer. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my folded deed. Old habit. I keep copies close. The officer scanned it quickly. His expression changed, just slightly. "This shows the creek entirely on his parcel." Linda's smile flickered. "That survey is outdated," she said fast. "The board approved a modification." I blinked. "You modified a natural waterway. Without county approval." She didn't respond. Instead, she stepped closer to the officer and lowered her voice. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the tone. Friendly, persuasive, confident. The officer sighed. "Sir, this appears to be a civil matter. If you interfere with the contracted work, you could be cited. Cited. For trying to stop someone from burying my creek." I stepped back slowly. Not because she was right. Because I knew something she didn't. Water doesn't disappear. It waits. The concrete kept pouring. The creek stopped flowing forward and started spreading outward. The ground behind the homes downhill began turning darker, softer. One of the workers muttered, "This doesn't look right." Linda shot him a glare. "Just finish the job." By sunset, the stream was gone. In its place was a smooth gray scar cutting across my yard. Linda walked past me as the trucks packed up. "You should have listened to the board," she said quietly. "This neighborhood runs better when people cooperate." I looked at the still water, pooling behind her fence line. "Water always finds its level," I said. She smirked. "Not anymore." That night, it rained. Not heavy, just steady. By midnight, I heard it. A low, wet sound, like something shifting underground. I stepped onto my back porch with a flashlight. The concrete barrier was holding, but the water wasn't gone. It was rising, spreading across the low valley behind the row of homes downhill, including hers. My phone buzzed at 2:13 a.m. A neighborhood alert flooding reported near lower properties. "Cause unknown." I didn't respond. At 3:02 a.m., another message. "Emergency drainage failure. Homes taking on water." I stood there in the dark, listening to distant shouting carry through the trees. The creek hadn't disappeared. It had been redirected, and Linda's house was built at the lowest point in the entire development. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that when I bought this land, I didn't just check the survey. I checked the original development blueprints. And the creek wasn't the problem. The foundation under half those homes was. By morning, The swamp wasn't in my yard anymore. By sunrise, the street looked like a disaster zone. Water covered the lower driveways. Lawns had turned into thick mud. Trash bins floated sideways like small boats. And right in the middle of it all, Linda stood barefoot in soaked pajamas, screaming at a city worker. "This is his fault!" She shouted the second she saw me walking down the sidewalk. "He sabotaged the drainage!" I didn't answer her. I just kept looking at the ground. The water wasn't random. It had formed a wide, shallow basin exactly where the original creek used to bend before the developers forced it into a narrow path years ago. Before the HOA decided to fix nature, a county utility truck pulled up behind the police cruiser. Two engineers stepped out, studying tablets. One of them looked confused. "Why is this channel sealed?" He asked no one in particular. Linda rushed over. "It was necessary. The board approved it." The engineer frowned. "Approved by who?" She hesitated. "The association." He looked at her like she'd just admitted something dangerous. "You can't alter a natural watercourse without a county permit." The words hung in the air. I saw it happen in real time. For the first time, her confidence cracked. The second engineer walked closer to the concrete line in my yard. He tapped it with his boot. "This is fresh." "Yes." "Yes," I said calmly. "Poured yesterday." "Without my permission." Linda spun toward me. "Stop pretending you're innocent. You've been fighting the HOA for months." "I sent one letter," I replied, with the official survey attached. The first engineer looked up from his tablet. "Sir, do you have that survey?" I pulled my phone out and opened the file. I didn't rush. I didn't argue. I just handed it to him. He zoomed in on the property lines. Then he zoomed out. Then his eyebrows lifted. "This creek is classified as a protected natural runoff channel," he said slowly. "It's tied to the original flood mitigation designed for Phase 1 of this development." Phase 1. That was the lower section. The section now sitting in 6 inches of standing water. Linda shook her head. "That's outdated. We updated drainage years ago." The engineer looked at her. "No, you didn't." Silence. One of the homeowners from downhill ran up, shoes covered in mud. "My crawl space is filling up. The sump pump can't keep up." Another voice yelled from across the street. "My garage wall is cracking." The engineer turned back to me. "When you bought this property, did anyone mention easements or water rights?" I nodded. "I requested the full county archive, including pre-construction terrain reports." Linda blinked. "Why would you even do that?" I looked at her evenly. "Because I used to design drainage systems for the Army Corps of Engineers." That was the first twist she didn't see coming. Murmurs started behind us. "You're kidding! He's an engineer?" I didn't smile. "I don't buy land without understanding how water moves." The second engineer crouched near the concrete barrier again. "If this channel is blocked, pressure builds underground. It doesn't just sit on top. It saturates the soil." He pointed downhill. "These homes are built on compacted fill. If that fill absorbs too much water..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. A loud cracking sound echoed from the direction of Linda's backyard. Everyone turned at once. Her wooden fence tilted slightly. Then another inch. Then it stopped. Linda's face went pale. "That's impossible," she whispered. The first engineer stood upright. "Who authorized the pour?" She opened her mouth. "Closed it." "The board voted," she said finally. "Do you have written approval?" "Do you have written approval?" Linda's lips parted, but no words came out. The county engineer didn't blink. "A stamped county permit? Not a neighborhood vote." The silence this time was heavy. Neighbors were no longer whispering. They were staring at her. One man lifted his phone. "Linda, you told us this was inspected." She snapped at him. "It was handled." "Handled by who?" Someone else shouted. The engineer turned to the police officer. "This isn't civil anymore. This is unauthorized alteration of a protected drainage channel. And now we have structural damage." The officer's tone changed instantly. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step over here." Linda laughed nervously. "This is ridiculous. It's just water." Right on cue, a deep rumble rolled through the ground. Everyone felt it. A section of lawn behind the lower home sank almost 2 inches, like a mattress losing air. Mud bubbled up through the grass. The engineer swore under his breath. "Hydrostatic pressure." I stepped back slowly. I had seen this before on bases overseas when contractors cut corners. Water doesn't fight you. It waits, then it takes everything at once. Linda looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. You did this, met her eyes. No, I warned you. The officer gently guided her toward his cruiser. Ma'am, you're being detained pending investigation for unlawful environmental modification and potential property damage. Gasps broke out across the street. One neighbor muttered, "She fined us for mailbox paint." Another said, "She towed my truck last year." The second engineer pointed at the concrete line. "This will have to be removed immediately. Full restoration." He looked at me. "You're the property owner. Are you willing to cooperate with corrective work?" "I'll cooperate," I said. "As long as it's done right." Linda's voice cracked from the back seat of the cruiser. "You think you've won?" I didn't walk closer. I didn't raise my voice. "I didn't fight for this country," I said evenly. "To be told I don't own my own land." That line traveled down the street like electricity. By afternoon, excavators were breaking apart the concrete they had poured less than 24 hours earlier. Water rushed forward the second it had space. Not wild, not violent, just steady the way it was meant to flow. Over the next week, the county investigation spread wider. They didn't just look at the creek. They looked at the permits, the board approvals, the HOA accounts, and that's when the final twist surfaced. The so-called Drainage Improvement Fund Linda had collected from homeowners for 2 years. It never went to drainage. It went to a private contractor, owned by her brother-in-law. The neighborhood meeting after that was packed. No one clapped when she walked in with her attorney. No one defended her. The county filed charges. Several homeowners filed civil suits. The HOA board was dissolved pending restructuring. And the creek? It runs clear again. Kids from downhill come up sometimes and toss small sticks into the water, watching them float past my yard. One of the neighbors who used to avoid me stopped by last week. He looked at the moving stream and shook his head. All this because she thought she could control water. I gave a small smile. "No," I said, "because she thought she could control people." The swamp is gone now. The lawns are drying. The foundations are being reinforced at the HOA's expense. And every time I sit on my porch and hear the creek moving the way it always has, I'm reminded of something simple. Power built on ego sinks. But land, truth, and water, they always find their way home.